Right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Rise City. My name's Pete, one of the pastors here, and I hope you're all having a good week so far. I had an okay week. It was my birthday this week. I turned 45. This is a pretty good one. I got socks with my dog's face on them, so that was awesome. Yeah, it was good. However, if I'm being honest, and I just gonna shoot you straight this morning, the thing about birthdays is I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with them. On the one hand, it's like you have all these great memories of being a kid and all the attention you long for and presents and socks with your dog's face on it. It's great, it's good. And then on the other hand, they have this funny way of just reminding me that I am speeding towards death at a high rate. Like, oh gosh. And it's like, here's your gift, 24 hours to think about how much you failed in life and you're not what you thought you would be when you were 15. You're like, ugh. I don't know what it is. Birthdays just have this weird thing with me of like, I just start thinking, even as it gets closer, I start to almost like, oh, my birthday's coming up. I just get sadness sometimes. It just like sinks into me. And I know, you're like, oh, ray of sunshine. Listen, as the great psalmist once said, it's my party and I'll cry if I want to, okay? Well, I don't know what it is, in all seriousness, and I've shared this before, birthdays, it's not just birthdays. So some people, you're gonna hear what I shared this morning and you're gonna be like, I don't quite get it, but others of you, I think, are gonna really understand where I'm coming from. Whatever, I don't know if it's, you can say whatever you want to say. Is it genetics, DNA, whatever? I don't know, spiritual, all these kind of things. My entire life, I have wrestled with this propensity to just find myself depressed and sad and discouraged. It's not just birthdays, like anxiety and all these kind of things it's been most of my life as I was little. And sometimes like birthdays just kind of bring them up. But it's other things. It's like, I'm very internal. I think about things a lot. And a lot of times when I'm thinking about things, what I end up thinking about is all the things that I'm not. I'm like, oh, I suck at that, I'm stupid. And it has this way of like, just going, and I find myself in these moments of feeling like I should just, what am I doing? I should just quit now, what's the use? This tendency to sink into this feeling that just maybe giving up and laying down is the better option. And it's something I've always struggled with. And I know just from law of large numbers, there's probably a lot of you in this room that hear that. You're like, I know what he's talking about. But I think all of us at one time or another can face that. I think some people have this thing inside where it's like this voice, this self-critic that's constantly like, you're terrible, just stop, give up, Things aren't what you want them to be. You're not who you thought you'd want to be. You're not accomplishing what you wanted to accomplish. You're never gonna do it. And you just have this way of suddenly feeling sadness inside. Nobody loves you. You're on your own, all these thoughts. For others, though, it's more external. It's literally the world around you is like, things are not changing. The things around me are not what I want them to be. I want this to happen. I want this person to change, and this is not happening. And suddenly you're just feeling discouraged, and it's like, it's like this emotional battle that we fight to keep our heads above water and not sink beneath it and just give into the dark cold. I know, ray of sunshine today. In the past few weeks, we've been doing this series we've been calling Meltdowns, and we've been looking at characters and people, real human beings in the Old Testament who had meltdowns. And we saw, in the beginning, Abraham had a horrible meltdown when he couldn't be patient. And Moses had a meltdown when he was just like frustrated trying to lead people who wouldn't ever follow him and change. Last week, we saw Jonah have this meltdown when he was just frustrated that God was loving and forgiving his enemies. Like, I don't want this God, and it just leads to this place. And today, I want to look at another story of someone who had what I guess you would call an emotional meltdown. And someone that, to be honest, really hit home for me. It wasn't, let's be honest, it wasn't an accident when Brandon was like putting this series together. He was like, oh, this guy struggled with depression. Hey, Pete, preach November 5th. All right, I'll do that one. I'll probably screw it up. Like, no. It hit home for me. It's a prophet named Elijah. And Elijah was a man who did some crazy cool things, but then also similarly found himself very frustrated, discouraged, depressed, just wanting to give up. But what I love about this story and why I want to share it today is that his downness, his discouragement, his depression was not the end of his story. It didn't define him.
And it doesn't have to be mine or yours either. It doesn't have to be a way of life. Feeling discouraged, frustrated, depressed is part sometimes of life, but it doesn't have to define my life. And when I stand up here this morning, there are times that I get asked to preach about things I got to research on. Like what I want to talk about this morning is my own life. It is my journey. That I do not have to be a person who's defined by depression or anxiety or struggles. There is a way forward. And I see it in Elijah's life. And I want to share it with you this morning, both what I see in the scriptures and what I have discovered even in my own walk with God. So would you pray with me, and we're going to just dive in and look at Elijah together and see where it takes us. God, we come to you this morning and we invite you to speak to us. Literally, come and speak to us, God. Because there's nothing else that's going to satisfy. We ask you and invite you to reveal yourself, to make yourself known to us, God, to meet us in our lowest moments. God, we ask you this morning that as we're coming in this place, and maybe we're feeling good, but we also know that we have a history of falling back into it. We invite you, God, to change the course and direction of our lives. The truth of your word, the power of your voice coming and being real in our hearts. So come this morning and meet with us. We pray this in your name. Amen. All right, Elijah. Elijah was a prophet who read about in the books of 1st and 2nd Kings. And if you read 1st and 2nd Kings, what you find is they're sort of like a Shakespearean tragedy in a sense of how horrible and drastically terrible everything got for the Jewish people. God called this man Abraham a few centuries before this and established this nation called Israel and said, you're going to be a special people who follow me and me alone. I will be your God. You're going to live differently, and it's going to be great for you. And then you follow the story, and it doesn't quite go that way. They all fall away from it, and nobody seems to want to do it. And by the time of Elijah's life, you actually come to this moment where the king of Israel, the person leading, is more wicked and evil than anybody. We pick it up in chapter 16, verse 33. It talks about the king. His name is Ahab. And it says this, he, Ahab, married Jezebel, daughter of, king of whatever, and began to serve Baal and worship him. So the king of Israel was actually worshiping a pagan god. And then worse, he set up an altar in the temple. And I can't even stress, like the temple was the place where the one true God is worshiped, the holy place. This guy built an altar to a pagan god in the middle of it and called all the nation to come and worship a false god. He also made an Asherah pole, which was another way of worshiping the goddess Asherah. He did more to arouse the anger of the Lord, the God of Israel, than all the kings before him. So this is when Elijah is alive, right? Things are not going well. And his wife Jezebel was so evil and so wicked. Not only was she allowing all this paganism to happen, she was actually having the true prophets of Yahweh murdered and killed. She was like wiping them out. Anybody that said you shouldn't worship Baal and Asherah, she was having them killed. This is when Elijah's alive. So God speaks to Elijah and says, here's what's gonna happen. I want you to go and announce to the king that I'm angry. This isn't gonna, and I'm sending a drought on the land. And it's not gonna rain again until he repents. And so Elijah goes and announces this, and it happens. It just stops raining. And for 3 years, they don't get any rain. This is in the Middle East. This is a big deal. People start starving. It's famine. It's terrible. Everyone's struggling. And finally, after 3 years, God comes again to Elijah and says, all right, it's been 3 years. I want you to go to the king and announce that I'm willing to let it rain again. And this is when the story gets really cool. So Elijah travels and goes to the king whose wife wants to kill him. And he's ready to say, and if I'm Elijah, here's what I'm thinking. Elijah's probably thinking, okay, it's been 3 years. It hasn't rained. I told him it was going to rain. The king obviously has got the message. The king obviously is ready to fall on his knees and repent. So now I'm going to come and it's all going to happen. And when the king sees Elijah in chapter 18, verse 17, it says this. When he saw Elijah, he said to him, is that you troubler of Israel? The king blames Elijah for the drought. This is your fault. We're all suffering because of you. Like, what? And Elijah quickly refutes it, like, no. This is happening because of you. You are the king, and you are leading people into sin and wickedness. This has been brought upon by you and your wife. So now, in front of all the nation, I am going to prove it. And when I read this passage in 1 Kings, I start hearing the theme songs from like Rocky. Dun, 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 dun. And he's like, let's go. So he's like, I'm going to challenge you today. So he offers a challenge, and he says, we're gonna have a good old-fashioned duel and see who is really God. So if you haven't read it, man, go pick it up in 1 Kings 18, but he gathers all the prophets of Baal and Asherah together. And he just summons the whole nation, everyone, all these people gather. And in front of all these people, Elijah calls to them and says, how long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. If Baal is God, follow him. Let's find out right now. So he says, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna build 2 altars, get 2 bulls, we're gonna kill them and sacrifice them on the altar. And then usually what we do is we burn them. It's part of the tradition. He's like, so put your bull on the altar. Nobody light it on fire. You pray as much as you need to and ask your God Baal to send fire and light it on fire. Then I'll pray, and whichever one lights on fire, we'll know that's God. Okay, let's do it. So all the 400-some prophets of Baal, they get around this thing and they just start, oh, Baal, please. They start chanting, they start singing, they start cutting themselves. And Elijah's just in the corner mocking them. He's like, is your God on the toilet? What's going on? He's like, all right, my turn. Now, take as much water as you can find and just douse this thing in water. Let me really show you. Like, water, it's not going to burn. Cover it in water. And he prays. He goes, he says, God, if you're really God, let's see it. And in verse 38, fire from the Lord fell from heaven, burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stone, the soil, licked up the water. Like, what a crazy moment. Just fire fell out of the sky and burns everything up. Could you imagine being there and seeing that? And the people are like, oh, and they fall on their knees, like, oh, Yahweh. They cry out, he's the God, he's truly God. And they actually, they start a riot, and they kill all the false prophets. And then it starts to rain. So fire falls from heaven, and then it starts to rain. Could there ever be a truer, clearer picture that God is in charge and God is who he says he is, right? Which at this point, clearly, everything is now going to get better. Finally, the people are going to respond. All the false gods will be removed. The king will see the error of his ways. Nope. Ahab goes home, tells his wife, oh, this Elijah guy killed all your prophets. She's like, what? And she sends him a message in chapter 19, verse 2. She sends a message to Elijah to say, may the gods, my gods, I'm swearing an oath, deal with me ever so severely if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like one of them. Really? Even after the fire? Like, really? What's that guy got to do to get through to you people? Can you just imagine being Elijah? And of course, Elijah just prayed and fire fell from heaven and it started raining after 3 years. So Elijah's response to this woman was like, please, I'm scared of you. Have you seen what God has done? Verse 3, no, Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. Okay. And like the other meltdowns we've seen the past few weeks, he just kind of loses it. Verse 4, it says he came to a broom bush and he sat down under it and he prayed that he might die. I've had enough, Lord. I've had enough. Take my life. I'm no better than my ancestors. I'm done, God. And he ends up hiding out in a cave. Just done with it all, right? And I don't know about you, but there's a part of me that I feel like I can kind of relate to this guy. And here's the thing, and I want to do a little bit of like wordplay with you for a minute. The truth is, I wrestled with this whole, like, he ran for his life, because I was always like, well, he ran for his life, he was scared, and then he prayed to die. That doesn't really make sense. And what I found is when I looked at the original Hebrew language, in verse 3, when it says he was afraid, the word Hebrew, yar, doesn't actually mean scared. It means surprised or startled. So it could mean fear, but it also, I think a better translation is probably Elijah was just like, what? What? Seriously? God, I'm done. And the Lord comes to him in the cave and says, what are you doing, Elijah? And in verse 10 he replies, he says, I've been very zealous for the Lord. I've done everything you wanted me to do. I've done everything I can do, God. Seriously. The Israelites have rejected your covenant. They've torn down your altars. They put your prophets to death with the sword. These people will never change no matter what I do. This is pointless. I'm the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me too. That's it, no more. I'm just done, God. I can't do it. And I read that, and I don't think Elijah was running for his life out of fear. I think he was just finding his life unbearable at that moment. You ever been there? I'm done. It's the last straw. I've grown so tired of this, beating my head against a wall, waiting for something to change. It's not going to change. And I think Elijah's prayer for God to let him die was just a sign of hopelessness, depression, discouragement, frustration, with God's call on his life that seemed like it was keep coming to nothing, repeated failures. He just wants to lie down and just be done with it. Ever felt that way? I don't know. I have, okay. I've had these times in my life where I felt like I've tried so hard and like again and again I want something to change. More often than not, it's internal things I want to change in myself, and they just, I suddenly find myself right back where I started. One of the craziest, stupidest ironies of this for me is one of the things I really hate about myself is how my moods tend to get dark so quickly. And then I get dark because my moods get dark and I can't win. It's a vicious cycle. But I find myself starting to get on track and I fall back into it and it's just like, this is never going to change. And the like heaviness can just settle on my shoulders. And it's just like, I'm done. And I don't know, maybe it's discouragement because like Elijah, you've been wanting things around you to change. Maybe there's something in your life that you're just like, all your effort, your work, and your prayer, it doesn't feel like it's coming to anything, and it's growing more and more hopeless. How long do I have to pray for this person? God, how long do I have to put up with this that's going on for my child, my spouse? I want to see this thing change. It's not changing. I'm just feeling done. When will they stop making bad decisions? When will it actually turn around? When will this actually be enough? When will this get fixed? How long do I have to put up with it because it hurts too much? And I don't have any more to give, and I just feel done. Maybe you're like me and it's more internal and you're just tired and you're sick of the weaknesses and the failures inside of you that just keep cycling and recurring. Like, God, I don't have what it takes. You messed up when you made me. You didn't give me enough of what I needed to get this done. Can I just quit already? And sometimes it just carries this like sadness, this low energy of just like, whatever you want to call it. And you're like, this will never change. I'll never change. Why bother? And if you're feeling that or you have a propensity to feel that, you're not alone. But look, I'm actually not here to throw a pity party. That's not my point. I've been there a lot, but what I actually want to talk about this morning is that I have learned, especially the way Elijah has, that I don't have to stay there, that there actually is a way forward. And I just think sometimes we have to have the right perspective on this and make sure we know what we're looking for. That depression and discouragement don't have to define my life. They might be a battle, they might be something I have to war against, but they don't have to be that which defines me. They don't have to be the thing that always holds me down and makes me want to give up. And the frustrations you might be feeling with the world around you don't have to define you. And I want to keep reading. I love what happens with Elijah. So Elijah's hiding in this cave. He's laying on the floor. And the voice of God comes to him and says, "What's going on, Elijah?" Oh God, I've tried. I'm done. I'm just done. The Lord said, "Okay." Chapter 19, verse 11. The Lord said, "I want you to go out of your cave and stand in the mountain. In the presence of the Lord is about to pass by. Like, I'm coming. Go stand out there and wait for me." And if you're Elijah, you're like, all right. And it says, a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart, shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And there was earthquake and everything was rocking, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And then there was fire, more fire, fire, everything's on fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. And Elijah heard the whisper. He pulled his cloak over his face and he stood at the mouth of the cave. And the voice said to him, "Elijah, what are you doing here? And Elijah repeats the same thing. I've just tried, God. I've done everything you want me to do. And they won't change. I'm giving up. And the gentle whisper in verse 15 says, Elijah, go back the way you came. Go back the way you came. And Elijah does. Elijah goes back and continues on. And there's more chapters after this of Elijah doing great things. And I want you to notice something really interesting about this passage. Here's Elijah, droopy, moody. I don't know. I'm projecting. Done with everything, gets up, stands in the mouth of the cave. All right, God. And all these amazing things happen. Miracles. And it changes nothing. He's not moved by them at all. He already saw amazing miracles. He just saw fire from heaven fall down and a drought end when he prayed. And a few days later, he's hiding in a cave depressed. The fire didn't change his emotions. The end of the drought didn't change his emotions. Yeah, that was cool. I saw it the first time. It didn't fix anything. It didn't keep me from being discouraged. The king's still a jerk. His wife's still crazy. I'm still feeling like a failure. Elijah needed something more. And the reality is, and I think what I want to hit home here this morning is that I have found a lot in my life that there's this inevitable response from people when I'm feeling the way I feel. And it goes something like this: just hang in there, brother. A miracle's on the way. It'll get better soon. And please hear me. This is not intended to be like National Pessimist Hour with Pete. I actually believe in miracles. I believe that God brings goodness in the world around me, and I pray for them. And I ask God to change and move in my life. I ask God to intervene and do things on my behalf. I invite him to work wonders and change my situations. I am all for it. The problem, though, is that when I think the solution to my emotions and my feelings of dealing with discouragement and frustration and depression, the solution is waiting around for something big to happen, for my circumstances to change, then I'll be happy. If this thing could just get fixed, then I'll have contentment. If this thing over here would just happen, then I'll have some joy in my heart. I won't be depressed anymore if I can just have a little bit more money. If I could just get this promotion over here, then I'll have contentment. The reason I'm so sad, the reason I'm so down is because this thing didn't work out. If that thing worked out, then, it'd all be better. So God, would you please come and change that thing? Here's the problem. If my inner peace, if the joy that I'm looking for in my life, if contentment, if this thing that is good inside of me is always going to be dependent on circumstances, I am always going to be defined by depression and sadness because I will always face difficult circumstances. And sometimes they don't change when I want them to. Sometimes they don't change at all. I think of the author of Hebrews in chapter 11. He writes this long list of heroes of the faith who all stood faithfully and waited for God to do what they promised, and none of them saw it when they died. And I'm like, how did they stay positive if none of them saw their circumstance change in their actual life? You keep reading the story of Elijah. Elijah gets up and goes back like God tells him to do. And everything is the same as it was when he left the cave. The wicked king and his crazy wife are still on the throne. The nation is still worshiping foreign gods, even after seeing fire fall from heaven. They do for the next few centuries. And yet Elijah keeps going. Elijah doesn't stay in the cave and die. Something changed inside of him, and it wasn't his circumstances. His hope and his courage wasn't found in whether or not Ahab changed his mind or the people repented. His hope, his courage, his contentment, what was motivating him and moving him forward was something else. And it also wasn't fire and earthquakes and wind and rain. And you got to ask yourself, what if the thing that's causing you so much discouragement and frustration, keeping you down, takes years and years to happen? And what if it never happens? Will you just have to live the rest of your life? Is this what you're destined for? Are you just destined to be a sad person forever? Are you just destined to be grumpy and complain and whine and, oh, my life sucks? Is that what life is? No wonder alcoholism and drug use is just so rampant because we don't know what we can find to make ourselves feel better. Is this the life Jesus came to offer? And look, here's the really scary thing, okay? Here's the scariest part about this. How often have the circumstances in your life actually improved and it still didn't change how you felt? How often have you gotten what you wanted and you're like, whoa, crap, I still feel empty? Do you know some of the highest rates of depression and even suicide are among rich and famous people, even lottery winners? Because so many of us are living with this mentality that says, if I can just fix this thing around me, if the stuff around me gets better, if I get more money, if I can get then I'll feel better. And then people get it, and it's even worse. Because it's like, I thought that would make me happy, and I'm still miserable. There's nothing worth living for. I'm convinced if I can just change the external, the internal will follow. And it doesn't. It's like the fire falls and the drought ends and the wells are refilled, and yet we still feel empty. Why? Because those things are not what God intended for human beings to be fulfilled by. God didn't create you with the intention that you would find ultimate contentment and fulfillment by having stuff and having a perfect world around you. It was never his plan. When he made you, he had a very specific plan in mind. And it wasn't that his hands would give you all the things that make you happy. His plan was that he would be what ultimately makes you happy. God's intention was that he himself would be the ultimate source of contentment and joy in your life. And it wasn't the fire, it wasn't the rain, it was the very voice of God that Elijah needed. It was God himself coming into that cave and saying, Elijah, I'm with you. Let's get up and go back to work. And it's why, we look for the things outside of us to make us happy, and they don't, because we were never made to be content with those things. We say, I don't feel like I'm all that I should be. Newsflash, you're not. You will never be all you should be without him in your life. You will never be complete without God's presence, his spirit living inside of you. Without a relationship with him, there will always be something missing. And what's beautiful about Elijah's story is I just love that he didn't find the hope and the courage from the fire and the rain. One of the greatest miracles in the Bible ever recorded. He took off running shortly after. It wasn't the external things that changed him. It was a still, small voice in a dark cave that filled him up and kept him moving. Because here's the thing, I would say this. While God did all of those things, God was not in all of those things. And God can give you things. God can change situations in your life. But we'll find they don't always change how we feel inside. And we're I want bigger, I want more exciting events. I want something crazy to happen. And God is saying, the thing that you need right now is not all of that. You just need me. Elijah, get up, keep going. I'm with you. And so often in our meltdowns, we come to God, and I do this. God, I'm struggling. Would you just change this? Would you just fix this? Whatever. And it's okay. It is. I'm not telling you not to do that. Jesus told us to go to God and ask for things and pray for our daily bread. I do pray for God to fix things. And we're like, what Pete preached about? Oh, he told us just to give up and God's not going to fix anything. No, I don't. I do believe that God moves. My point, though, is that there's a difference between believing God can move and change things and basing my ultimate joy on whether he does or not. On basing my contentment on whether it gets fixed. As long as I'm doing that, I am going to struggle. As long as what you're looking for to find hope and joy in your heart is stuff outside of you, you will always be defined by depression, anxiety, and discouragement. Because God sometimes does fix things and sometimes he doesn't. That's just life. We have to be based on something else. We have to find something better. And in my own life, I've seen him move mountains. I've seen him do incredible things. But then just like Elisha, I found myself feeling depressed and discouraged shortly after. hearing that voice knocking on my door just moments after seeing, it's just life, right? You know what I'm talking about? You've been there? Like something great happens, you're like, yeah, I'm still, what is this? You see fire from heaven fall figuratively, and then shortly later, I'm just like, ugh. It's because the fire might have come from God, but it isn't God. He might have done it, but he wasn't in it. And what I need in these moments is him. I don't need the stuff he can give me. I need him. I need him in my life. And I'm reminded of Paul, and I don't always relate well to Paul. He seems like a much better person than me, but there's this moment that Paul is talking in his second letter to the church in Corinth, and he says, there's this thing inside of me. He called it a thorn in his flesh. He didn't explain it. He didn't tell us what it was. I wish what is it? What was it? He's like, it's tormenting me. It's terrible. And I pleaded with God, take this away. Fix this. I don't like this. And every time, Paul says, I pray that God would fix this thing that I don't like, God would respond by saying, no. What? Instead, he would say this to me, 2 Corinthians 12, my grace, the gift that I give you, what I am going to give you is sufficient. What am I going to give you? Christ's power will rest on you. The gift, the grace that God says, Paul, I'm not going to take this away from you. Instead, I'm going to give you something better. I'm going to do something better for you. I am going to come and my spirit is going to rest on you and be your strength and your weakness. I'm not going to take away your weakness. I'm going to show you that you can actually find strength if you'll do life with me. That I don't have to fix all your weakness, God is saying. Instead, I just have to come and be present in your life. And it's okay to have weaknesses. It's okay to have things inside that we struggle with and may never change on this side of heaven. You can still get up and keep going and find joy and contentment because when you are weak, he is strong if you will allow him to be that in your life. And Paul is saying, I want this thorn in my flesh gone. I want my circumstance to change, but I've learned that actually it's bringing about something better because I'm learning to rely on the Holy Spirit in my life more than constantly wait for things to get fixed and get better. God didn't say to Paul, oh, you struggling? Fixed. He didn't do that to Elijah either. Instead, it was a still small voice, I think, saying, Paul, get up, keep going. I'm with you. Elijah, get up, keep going. I'm with you. Pete, get up, keep going. I'm with you. Do you see the difference? It's subtle, but it's powerful. And it's quite possible that for Elijah, that dark, damp cave he was hiding in was the best place he could have been. Because it was the place that he got what he needed most. Not more fire, wind, and rain. God himself met him. And maybe it's time our prayers become less just a list of things we need God to fix, pushing buttons on the God vending machine, and more about, God, I need to meet with you. I need you, not what you can give me. That is the only thing that will satisfy. I love this psalm. It's so simple, but it's profound. This psalmist says it, I don't even know who wrote it. He says, as for me, it's good to be near God. What a great statement. As for me, it's in that, I've taught on that word good before, like flourish, goodness, fulfillment, that which I'm looking for in life. As for me, I find it near God. Not in what God can give me, just being near God. I'm reminded of another psalmist who spent his whole life probably working and living near God in the temple. And one day the Babylonian army came and took him away. And living in exile, he sat down and he said, oh, my soul longs for the presence of God like a deer panting for water. My soul longs for you. When can I be back near you? There was a person who understood true contentment and fulfillment was not found in stuff God gives, but God himself. And I wanted to share this because part of my struggle, honestly, is, and I know this is always weird because I often feel this tension from people when they get to know me. And I get this inevitable question, and I don't judge people for it. I'm with them. I'll they'll get to know me, and eventually I'll see their eyebrow start to go up like this, and I'm like, it's coming. Why did you become a pastor? I don't know. The worst thing is when they say, why'd you pick this? You think I picked this? You think I was just like sitting in school and I was like, law, engineering, Christian ministry, that's what I'm doing. Oh, I don't know. I feel like the Lord told me to do this. And there have been moments that I have like come in this room and just like sat on this floor and like, God, I know you're all knowing and you're omniscient and everything, but I think you might have made a mistake here telling me to do this. Like this, what? And there, but to the point, it's like, I need to stop. I guess I could be a plumber. I don't know this is stupid. What am I doing here, God? And every time I come to that moment, God's response is the same again and again and again. It's never, you're right, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I got you confused with someone else. My bad. It's, Pete, when you're weak, I'm strong. Get up, keep going. And that's all I need. I didn't need anything else. And they're like, God, when are you going to fix me? He's like, never. When you're weak, I'm strong. But here's the thing. When I say that, it can be simplistic and trite if you miss the point. It can be like, well, so strong like you're going to fix things, right? That's not what he's saying. He's not saying when you're weak, I'm going to fix all your problems. He's saying in your weakness, when you realize that you're not good enough, when you don't measure up, when some things around you can't be fixed, you don't have the power to do it, and you're feeling this, and this heaviness is settling in, and you want to lay down and die, that's when the Holy Spirit comes and says, right now I'm your strength. Right now I am with you. Get up and keep going. It's not in your weakness, I'll fix everything. It's in your weakness, I will be with you and give you strength to work through it. And I think for so many of us, when we're wrestling with these feelings, it's good to pray and ask God to do something about them. Do it. Pray, ask God to fix them. But understand that ultimately what's going to change how you feel for the long run is not just getting your problems fixed. It's when the Spirit of God invades your heart, sheds light inside of you, and gives you a peace and a hope that's beyond understanding. And you're like, I don't even know where this came from. In the midst of your darkness, suddenly your mind starts to think differently. In the midst of pessimism, optimism starts to grow. In the midst of, oh, this is terrible, it's like, no, I can do this. Where did that come from? God, the Holy Spirit working inside of you, being your strength. It's good to ask for help. It's good to say, God, help me. But more than anything, what is good for you is to be near him. And if you want something pragmatic, practical, let me give it to you. Especially if you're somebody who struggles with emotional highs and lows. We have this thing in the Christian community called spiritual disciplines. Discipline. But what you need to understand is when we say spiritual discipline, what we're saying is there have to be things in my life that I will choose to do on a regular basis. Even when I don't feel like I need it, I'm going to do it anyway. I'll be disciplined to do it anyway. Because when the moment comes that I do need it, it's there. And Jesus made this comment to us. And he said, I am the vine, you're a branch. Abide in me, remain in me. And as followers of Jesus, we have got to be people who are committed on a regular basis to prioritize being near God. You've got to do it. You've got to prioritize hearing from God. Why do you read my Bible? I've read it already. Keep reading it. Keep using it as a way to be near God. Prioritize it. And again, and I'm just speaking for myself here, the way that I have found victory in my life is not by having God change my mental makeup. It is by choosing to be disciplined to spend time with him on a regular basis. And when the thoughts start to come in and I feel it like darkness just encroaching upon me, instead of succumbing to it, there's this well that I pull from because I've spent every day for the past 3 weeks in here on my knees talking to God. And he's there and he's with me when the darkness comes. And it's like, nope. And so often when it consumes me and I just fall into this low place and I'm done, I every single time can look back and be like, I haven't opened my Bible in a month, crud. There is a cause and effect relationship between my decision to be near God, my decision to go and crawl into that dark cave, because I know that hearing his voice and spending time with him is the only antidote to the poison that is consuming me. And if I'm not taking it on a regular basis, it will eat away at me. All of us, we're called to it. We're called to live our lives in a way that says, God, I need you more than I need anything else, so I'm going to prioritize you. I'm going to spend time with you. And so I asked the band even today, and we always kind of do a closing song. I don't just want a closing song. Let's spend some time crawling into that cave. As they come out and lead us, I just want to spend a few minutes saying, God, speak right now, right here. And this is one of those moments, choosing to come here and join us on a Sunday morning is part of a discipline of choosing to prioritize God's presence in my life. But it also means tomorrow when you wake up, you have another choice to do it again. To read my Bible, to spend time with him, to be near him, to worship him. So as they play, let's just stay seated. I don't want to make this weird. Maybe just a moment that you can just shut your eyes and speak to him. Say, God, I'm here. I'm here. And maybe you're like, actually, everything's fine right now. I feel good. What a great time to be God. Come and speak to me. Thank you for the goodness in my life. Maybe you're sitting there and you're feeling like you're drowning, and right now you say, Holy Spirit, come. I need you right now more than I need you to fix my problems. God, we invite you in this place. I know you're already here, but I say that because I don't always recognize that you're here. So for me to verbalize, I invite you. I know it's me saying, here I am. Speak. Here we are, God. Broken, wounded, discouraged, unsettled people coming to you and saying, be our strength, Father. Be our hope, Father. Be our joy. Be our light in darkness. We just want you.